Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Zach Metkler.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and lo and behold, just one-on-one for the first time in a very long time, since the end of last year, actually, as I look back in my notes. A voice that hasn't been on the show since the NFL draft or whereabouts then. And usually he's talking with Brian in my absence, but today he is here in Brian's absence, and that's because we got to sit together at the Steelers Training Camp this weekend and compare some notes. First time you've been on since being a member of Pro Football Focus now, so congratulations for that, Mr. Zach Metkler.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. It's good to be back on here. It's been a busy summer of getting things organized with Pro Football Focus and still staying active with SCU, so it's been a fun but enjoyable and hectic summer all in one.
Yeah, among the many hats that Zach wears, he has his own sites that he contributes to as well. So he's a very, very busy football guy. But we have football to talk about. Holy cow, football in shorts and pads. We got some padded practices in over the weekend. Some things were fun. One thing I want to address first is that there was some injury concerns. Anything that came out of Camp Sunday, I would say we got to wait. It's a wait-and-see process. Vance McDonald very casually hopped on a cart and was helped off. Nobody, I think, saw and or reported that and or noticed it. Ben had a quick word over there, I think, and that was reported afterwards with Mike Tomlin as a foot injury. We also heard something about a groin with Sean Davis, so the missile, Nat Burhey, Nat Burhey, I believe. I screw his name up, but I like calling him the missile. He got a lot of reps with the first team defense. We'll be talking about that. I'm trying to think who else was banged up. TJ Watt was banged up. It seemed like, as you said, Zach, probably just a lot of heat-type related issues more than anything.
Yeah, you get those hot weather days out there like today. I mean, it wasn't overly hot, but when you're out there, there was very little cloud cover. You're running around. You finally get your first day in pads. Those type of heat-related injuries are going to happen a lot. It has nothing to do with the player's injury durability as far as I'm concerned. It's just bad luck. They might not have been as hydrated as they needed to be. There's any number of things that can go into it. I take it more as just the fact that it's the first day in pad or the second day in pads. You know, they're out there. They're going full speed. They're trying to make a play. Move the wrong way, and cramps and tightness happens. I'm not looking too much into it at this point.
Yeah, I'm never looking a whole lot into it. I always keep bringing up the Marcus Wheaton breaking his shoelaces. If you've ever hopped around on a shoe that had laces broken, you'll know what I mean. Or ladies, if you have sandals, I know that's fun too. At least some of you may have the hair bands or whatever. Then you can wrap that around your foot as kind of like a bandage. But I don't have hair, so I can't relate to any of this. There was a little bit more injury news. I'll segue into a really cool story that I have and talk to some really cool fans out there. I've got some other people that have been emailing me some cool stuff from camp, so thank you. Keep it coming. Appreciate it. The big one was Ramon Foster. Wasn't there to see it, but a lot of people talk about how he was clutching his knee, carted off. Major concern, but looks like he will. It's non-surgical. You're the medical guy. You're the guy who knows these things. Explain exactly the deal with Ramon Foster. We expect him to be back for week 1.
Yeah, so he went down with a hyperextended knee. And truth be told, that was about as good of a circumstance as you're going to get. A lot of times, especially with the big uglies down the line, you get rolled up on like that and hyperextending your knee, especially for a guy that's just the sheer size of Foster. He's lucky he had no real structural damage because that was my main concern. I thought at minimum it would be a partial tear. I legitimately thought, just based on the description of his pain and the way he was rolling around there, that he was going to have a tear of some sort, one of the ligaments through his knee. So just being a hyperextension, and then I know there's reports, nothing's been fully confirmed by the team as far as I know, but there's been a lot of speculation around from the media that he's also suffering from a bone bruise somewhere in his knee. And if that's the case, I think that's what's going to end up holding him back more, because that's where a lot of your pain maintenance comes from, is just trying to be able to get down there and push off and get into a stance and explode off. So if he can recover from that quicker than not, I think there's a very solid chance he comes back week 1. I'm not the team physician. I'm not going to make that assumption. But just when you look at other players around the league that have had similar bone bruise issues like that, it's good that it happened this early in camp. So that way there's a potential he doesn't miss any time once the regular season rolls around.
That's a good thing that you brought up the bone bruise and how that could really be a nagging injury. Wasn't that the thing that really kept Marquise Pouncey out when everyone thought he was going to be brought back from IR like a few seasons ago when he was lost early in the preseason? I can't recall.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. And those things, especially when you're a lineman, you're getting down in your stance and you're exploding off and you're driving your legs and pounding into the ground. A bone bruise might not seem like it's that big of a deal, but when you're doing it repetitively, 60, 70 snaps a game, plus practices, it takes a toll on your body, and it's not something you want to go through. I've had the unfortunate pleasure of having a bone bruise, in the past, and they linger a little bit if you're not maintaining it well. I trust the Steelers staff to be able to take care of whatever's going on with Ramon Foster, but if there's something that's going to hold him back, I believe it'd be that more so than the hyperextension itself.
So the one that more interested me was the fact that Tomlin was talking about Juju Smith-Schuster not finishing practice. And I think you and I had the same reaction to this because following practice, Ben Roethlisberger had a bag of footballs in the one end zone and was working on some corner post routes, flag route. Whichever one goes to the outside. It's been a long day. We've been in the sun, but he was working towards the corner, and he must have done about maybe 10, 15 reps at least, throwing balls to Juju, and he looked completely fine. Now that's not the only reason I'm thinking Juju's fine. So just a little backstory. One of my cousins brings his nephews. He's 5 years old. And, I'm just like, hey, don't bring him. It's going to be excruciatingly just miserable, boring. It's just practice. A lot of people don't get the enjoyment or see the things that you and I might see. And, they start to zone out. Okay, you get to see some Steelers. You might get to get some autographs. But I know somebody was asking about, like, the best way to get autographs at one of these things. Get lucky. That's about the best way. You're going to get lucky. There's a few spots where they come out at the very top before practice. They're trying to get to practice. Afterward, a lot of them are hanging out with their family or friends that attended, and they're there. And, you get to do things that you can't normally do. Like Ben's out there playing catch with one of his sons, I believe, following like an hour after the practice closes. But anyways, the little guy, the 5-year-old guy, he's up on his shoulders, up on my cousin's shoulders, and he's crying. He wants to meet Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown took forever because he was getting extra work in on a jugs machine. I think James Washington was over there too. It was on the far side of the field. Couldn't really tell. Then it looks like Antonio Brown has an interview with Sports Illustrated's Peter King, who I got to speak with for about a minute or so real quick early in the day. And then he comes over and he was kind of teasing, like almost like Hulk Hogan going to each side. Which side of the fence do I come to? And he goes over and they run over and they try and get him and they didn't get him. AB hops in a golf cart. Now they golf cart these guys around back to their dorms and stuff. And AB kind of points and says, go down here. And everybody shifts to go down there, and he tries to get Antonio Brown's attention once again, almost doesn't get it. The little guy is going into like convulsions. I mean, you can just imagine being a little kid and being crushed. I mean, he's almost like screaming. He is just devastated. And Antonio Brown like stops like everything and asks, why is the little man crying? And he said, because you're his idol. And Antonio Brown grabs him and brings him over onto the golf cart, signs his Antonio Brown jersey on the back, sits him on his lap, takes a selfie with him, which is all over my Facebook timeline because of the friends and family that saw it. So just you get lucky with this stuff. Now, that's not the thing that's really lucky or the thing that had to do with Juju and his injury. So my cousin comes over because I'm watching this in the distance. He comes over, the little man still kind of crying and trying to catch his breath. And we're both looking at my cousin's phone. He's trying to show me this selfie with Antonio Brown. And I kid you not, I like look over my left shoulder, my cousin's to my left, just a little in the distance. I could see a Sharpie marker. Someone is writing on the back of his Juju Smith-Schuster jersey. You turn and look. Somebody goes, it's Juju. My cousin's like, oh my God. Juju Smith-Schuster snuck up behind us and autographs my cousin's jersey and then runs off like a bat out of hell and jumps on his golf cart like it's a getaway chase or something, like a bank robbery. And he's just laughing the entire time. You could hear him like just crack up that he snuck up on us. And we're just bewildered at this point. At least I am, because here you got the little man here who got his Antonio Brown jersey signed. You got the other cousin who just dumb lucks his way into whatever, gets Juju Smith-Schuster signed. I'm left holding the bag. I'm not the big autograph chaser anyway, so it's no big deal to me. I was laughing. It was funny. But just the fact Juju Smith-Schuster was goofing around, he got extra reps in with Ben. I'd be very shocked if he had anything wrong with him. Like, if it was somewhat of a precaution, it's gone. I think he's good to go. So don't read too much into these injury things. Now, that's one thing that stood out to me as far as like the extracurriculars, but we have some actual things to talk about today. I guess I'm going to let you lead this off, Zach, since I'm getting long-winded. I need to catch my own breath. Just one thing immediately, because I have like a list here of things that stood out for me. What was one of the things that stood out for you during camp?
Well, the one thing offensively that kind of took my eye was kind of looking at Mason Rudolph a lot today, because there's a lot of fanfare around him, because there's all the talk of him being the potential heir to Ben Roethlisberger. Seeing what he can come in and do. At this point, obviously it's early. We haven't seen him in an in-game situation, which is where the real decisions will be made. But he came in training camp. He started out as the number 4 quarterback. And really, he had some errors throughout the beginning of the training camp. He kind of started seeing some, he's a rookie, kind of getting his feet wet. And he had that moment today. I know there's a couple of plays earlier on during training camp where he looked a little sketchy, but he went from getting the 4 reps before, and now, he came out and was almost consistently second in line behind Ben with a lot of stuff. It's early in training camps. I'm not reading too much into that. But as camp went along, something I saw with him that I didn't see with Landry Jones at this point in his career, and I didn't see from Josh Dobbs last year, was really kind of him it seemed calming down in the pocket and really looking through his progressions. There were a couple plays where I saw he was reading through downfield. There was nothing there, and he had no problem checking down to one of his running backs or one of his safety valve tight ends. For me, you see a lot of rookie quarterbacks that want to make the big play. They want to show off the arm strength they have, and they don't realize that it's important to make those little dump-off passes to keep the drive alive, or at least get some positive yardage out of it. To see him going through those progressions and understanding the fact that it's okay to check down, that was impressive to me, and it kind of speaks volumes to his potential as a quarterback. And obviously, like I said, it's with the second-string defense, with the second-string offense, and it's not in a real game situation when, it actually matters. But seeing those progressive steps throughout his time so far behind center is something that you didn't see from Landry Jones whenever he was a rookie. It's something you didn't always see from Josh Dobbs last year when he was a rookie. Not to take anything away from them. I just think we're seeing some glimpses of Mason Rudolph that might make us feel a little more comfortable moving forward than we did with either Jones or Dobbs at this point.
Oh, I definitely have to agree with you there. Number one thing to point out or just at least highlight was that Mason was definitely getting the QB2 or backup reps, more than likely because they know who Landry Jones is at this point. They need to find out who Mason Rudolph is, and then Dobbs got quite a few reps. A lot of the later drills in the afternoon were almost exclusive to them. Ben ran a lot with the ones, with the first-team offense, mixing in a few guys here or there, and the same thing against the first team defense. And there was just you said absolutely a few things I agree with on this. Was Rudolph had some nice completions here or there, a lot of things running together as far as who he's throwing the ball to. I think one thing for sure was if it was Landry throwing to Darius Hayward-Bay was about 50-50 as usual, per his stereotype of catching the ball, and it wasn't really doing Mason any what's the word I'm looking for? Favors. He wasn't doing him any favors because, he throws a nice deep pass and then, it should have been catchable. You would like to think if it was like Antonio Brown or someone else that they would have hauled in this pass, which, by the way, speaking of Juju Smith-Schuster, holy cow, did he look good today. Oh my, he looks so fast. He looks fluid. He everything that came his way, it was like a magnet. But Rudolph, I even made mention of one thing. He avoids a sack by throwing a ball into the ground. He threw it in the dirt. It looked very like kind of Joe Flacco-esque. I didn't really want to put that on Twitter in the public realm, but But it did. And me and of course my other cousin who has a good eye for a lot of this stuff too, we're looking at this, and he says he says Mason reminds him a lot of Landry, but I said as far as like his body is shaped, his forearm, he throws the ball, this and that. But the other thing with Mason is that he reminds me of Ben. On the other hand, he just doesn't stand there and wait to get hit like a piñata, which I think Landry actually held the ball too long on one of the drills, and that was whistled dead. But he didn't have anybody open either, so he wasn't forcing anything. He was reading. But yes, Mason was he was going through his progressions. He had some checkdowns. Now, as opposed to Josh Dobbs, as you said, going for the big plays, he threw one that was downfield that was really ill-advised, and he got an earful from Ben Roethlisberger on the sideline. I'm not sure if you caught that too, but there was also a check down where he completely missed. I mean, it was just thrown way too short, and it was just like a little throwing a ball farther playing basketball and it was underthrown, and I just was a little puzzled by that. Dobbs had another one that went high. I almost wanted to say it was overthrown. I don't know if it was probably the same reason you didn't use that terminology as I did when Xavier Grimble went up and snagged one out of the air. He just didn't look very sharp, at least for one day, and that kind of thing, you can't take one day, but if it was this day and this happens more frequently, this isn't a good sign necessarily for Josh Dobbs.
No, and that's frustrating for me because, I've been very adamantly a Josh Dobbs truther. I see a lot of potential in him. I thought he didn't get it last year, but he showed progression. He had a lot of flaws coming out of Tennessee. That wasn't a secret. And I thought he took steps to prepare more efficiently. And, he's had his ups and downs this camp as well, and he's still a work in progress. And I think given the opportunity, he could really be a decent backup. I don't know that he'd ever be a starter in the league, Steelers or otherwise, but I think realistically today, he kind of did what I kind of said Mason Rudolph did. I mean, don't get me wrong, Rudolph did force a pass or two. I know there was one that stuck out of my head that he felt the pressure a little bit, stepped up in the pocket and just, errantly threw it towards DHB, which, luckily it hit DHB's hands, but realistically could have very easily been picked off otherwise. But looking at Dobbs, it pained me because, like I said, I've been such a big Dobbs truther over the last year and a half. But today was just not the best day for him. And if you're looking at just strictly quarterback play today, I don't see how you can look at it and say that Rudolph wasn't the second best quarterback out on the field today. Because I think, like you said, there was a couple times where Landry was just kind of standing in the pocket. It felt like he didn't sense the pressure, was very stoic. But then, there was one that was a strip sack. Like you said, there was the play or two that they blew dead because he was just standing there and not really making much effort to get out of the pocket and make a play, which I get it's training camp practices. You might do it in a game situation, but I think when you look at just the on the field poise and you look at what they were able to do with pure arm talent, I think Rudolph was hands away the number two today, at least.
Oh yeah, I got to agree with that too, and Landry is a soft spot for me, but you run these drills. He looks like the veteran. He looks like the guy that I'll put it this way: Rudolph, you could tell, is raw, but you could also see just the natural potential there, the things he just seems to just do without thinking, and it seems like maybe somebody like Landry or even Josh Dobbs might be overthinking things, maybe overcomplicating it for themselves. One thing that was definitely the pairing was James Washington and Mason Rudolph, and there was quite a few attempts between the two. And we also made some comments too, because I also have some notes here. Actually, is the very second set of notes that I have is about some corners, and then the third one I'll come back to Xavier Grimble because we had the same thought on him too today. He may be the Ike Redman Award winner again if he continues this through training camp. But Deshaun Phillips and Brian Allen. And I'm going to throw another name in here, too, because I had to keep looking at this. And I believe this was somebody that you pointed out to me when he was signed. He was one of the guys coming to camp. It's the other guy who wears number 30, not James Conner. And this is the reason why I had to keep looking at the roster that they hand you. They print you out. In the preseason, in case people don't know, there are several numbers that share between offense and defense. So you'll have a designation of like 30-0, which means James Conner offense, he's the offensive player. He gets the white top. Your defensive players are wearing the gold jerseys. So there's a number 30 on defense just because all of these numbers are basically issued. Now, not all of them 1 through 99, but the Steelers have several not officially retired jerseys that they just don't give out, like number 12, which was Terry Bradshaw's, for example, or we haven't seen anyone with 86 since Hines Ward left. So they issue doubled numbers, just for anyone who's not aware of that. And I saw Jamar Summers on here, and I want to say he's the one that you brought to my attention initially. He looks fast, every time there was something going on in the field, I had to go and say, wait, 30, that's not James Conner. That's somebody else. These are defensive drills. And that stood out to me. You could say your piece on this in a second too. But then we also mentioned how Brian Allen is just feisty and hand fighting and just he could get penalized depending on the officiating crew that's out there. But he is definitely him and Phillips were showing some physicality out there today.
Yeah, starting off with Summers, I was excited whenever the Steelers picked him up because whenever I was watching Obi Melifonwu from last year, a lot of his tape, Summers consistently was popping up on the film, and I had to look more into him to see what his deal was. And whenever he came on, the Steelers signed him. I thought it was a very under the radar signing, and the dude is fast. He's long, he's fast, and he has really solid ball skills. And I think today, he showed why he was an undrafted free agent. He's not flawless. But there was a lot of potential there when I saw him, in coverage. He wasn't shying down. He never seemed like he was truly overwhelmed. And, obviously it's early on. He wasn't going against top-tier talent, so it's kind of hard to dictate how much that actually matters. But seeing a guy like him at least going out there, making an effort, showing his athleticism, showing his awareness was a big deal for me. But for Brian Allen, I would love nothing more than to see him be able to carve a roll out with the Steelers. I mean, you don't see very many 6'3", 215-pound cornerbacks in the NFL. And, today he made some mistakes. He wasn't perfect, but I remember watching the matchup with him and James Washington, and you can tell both of them are just young guys fighting to, make an impact on this team because they would go and, we knew James Washington was an aggressive receiver, and we knew Brian Allen was a big guy, but both of them had no problem, being handsy, but it was in a respectful manner. They're just trying to make each other better. The one play that sticks out in my mind entirely, was this beautiful pass by Mason Rudolph where he threw it downfield, perfect touch, put the ball right on the mark. From the line, James Washington had beat Brian Allen off the mark. He put a little wiggle move on the top and blew the top off. And Brian Allen showed his solid recovery speed as far as I'm concerned, was able to go and by pure hustle, track the ball down, get his hand in the play and break the ball up on a perfect throw from Mason Rudolph. There was nothing else he really could have done at that point, which was just an awesome all-around play for not just Washington and Rudolph, but to see Allen have that recovery speed on a deceptively fast receiver and see that what he's able to do there. And, he was physical. He was coming up in the run game and forming and fitting to the tackle, not afraid to go and take people on and just consistently making a move and making a mark for himself to, do something to show that he deserves to be on this team and continue to make an impact and maybe get more defensive snaps this year than he had last year.
He is just, at least Brian Allen is a physical specimen to look at, just as you said, too, 6'3", 215-ish or whatever. I mean, and he doesn't look skinny. You look at Terrell Edmonds, and he kind of looks like he's skinny. You know what I mean? He's still lean and jacked, but there's some, actual meat on Brian Allen's frame.
He looks like a basketball player, honestly. He doesn't look like a football player. He's a big dude.
Definitely. Every time I look at him, now I'm 6'5" myself, and I look at him, he's almost looking at me eye to eye. So it's just whoa, that doesn't happen very often. You have somebody like Mike Hilton walk by, and you're like, oh, hey, there's Mike Hilton. He's a little smaller than I thought he would be. Hilton had an okay day too. He had a really good pass breakup. I'm trying to think who it was intended for or whatever. I remember I just had to pull it out because all these guys changed their numbers, and I'm like, hey, it's not Sean Davis. Sean Davis was doing pretty good in coverage early. I know a lot of emphasis has been put on Artie Burns, and Artie Burns looked like he was pretty much locking down Antonio Brown early on. I also thought that Burns come up with another interception. Now, I was on the other end of the field from where these drills were, so maybe I was probably about the 45, 50-yard line. I may have even been sitting with you at this point, but I couldn't actually tell if Artie came down with it again. But Edmonds did come down with one, and this is the reason Edmonds is here, at least in my opinion, opinion, and possibly yours as well. He's in there and he's covering tight ends. And the Steelers made an emphasis, I could tell today, to try and get Vance McDonald worked in. Ben Roethlisberger was looking at him more than anybody else, more than Juju, more than Antonio Brown. Everything was going towards Vance McDonald. And Edmonds reads this ball, hits it, and then he ends up doing kind of a juggling trick, hits it like 2-3 times, and ends up catching it for an interception. Or somebody out on Instagram or something ended up catching it on video. They must video the whole practice. I don't know how you do it. Just to catch that one play in the moment is pretty impressive for whoever got it on video. But it was an impressive play in and of itself.
Oh yeah, he had Vance McDonald blanketed from the get-go, and for Steelers fans, they consistently complain about how he can't cover tight ends and how they need to go and find a way to get Gronk locked up, and how Travis Kelce has his way with them, and blah blah blah, whatever. Seeing a player like Terrell Edmonds go in, knowing he's going to be a strong safety, having the opportunity to come in while Morgan Burnett's been down with his hamstring issues and really kind of take grasp of these first team reps is invaluable for him. Seeing him pretty much lock up Vance McDonald, who is, an all-round, all-purpose tight end. He can block, but he's very good in the open space, very good as a receiver. And he had a good route on Edmonds, but Edmonds had him locked up. Red was reading Ben the entire way through the progression, and then he went through, bit underneath on the ball, bobbled it to himself, and took it. And realistically, I think there's a solid chance it could have been a pick six. I mean, McDonald was able to get a hand on the sidelines, but he was not in a position to really make a tackle. And if Edmonds was going full speed, it's a pick six. And those are the type of plays that I think Edmonds is capable of making, and are going to make Steelers fans very happy as the season goes along. And to that end, looking at Sean Davis before he went down with his groin issue later on in practice, that first drive on the goal line, again, Ben was targeting in on Vance McDonald, seeing Davis completely just locked up on him and completely just getting a hand on there, not even fazed by the fact that McDonald had just completely out-physicaled him. That's a word.
Yeah, sure. We'll make it one.
Completely was able to get in there and make a play on the ball and swat it down. I think that might be the play you're talking about where it looked like Artie might have came away with the interception.
Yeah, I think it was right before you called. Ben extended a play after that, and you're like, Rosie Nix, and he finds Rosie Nix. He
finds him in the back of the end zone. It was nice seeing Davis make those plays, and if he can have Davis continue that kind of free safety, rangy aspect of his game, and seeing Edmonds in the position of being able to play in the box, cover those big receiving threats. I think that in and of itself is going to be a big boost to the Steelers secondary that we haven't been able to see in the past couple of years.
I have this one further down the list, but I'm going to bring it up now that I mentioned Rosie Nix. There was like Rosie Nix was putting on a clinic with toe taps today in the end zone, in the back of the end zone, on the sideline. And some of that was with Landry Jones at quarterback. These two, I don't know what the heck was going on, but it's like almost like they're working on Rosie Nix catching some more passes. I mean, he usually gets like maybe 5 targets in a season. I just don't know if that catch in Baltimore, against Baltimore, I should say, it woke up everyone last year and said, hey, maybe we should get this guy a little more involved, or if they're opening, it is Randy Fichtner. There's some maybe new wrinkles coming this way. I don't know if you noticed any of that chemistry between those two, or you had to have noticed the Knicks toe tap. See, I can't talk either. Toe tap. He's doing the Antonio Brown deal, trying to stay in bounds and making these acrobatic catches. And he's like the size of a bowling ball. I mean, it just doesn't, or the shape of a bowling ball. It was phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal to watch and witness in person.
Oh, it was completely unexpected. I never thought I love Rosie Nix as a player. I think he's a very big fan favorite. Anytime he's on the field, you hear all the fans cheering his name and whatnot. But to see him come down with the Antonio Brown-esque catch like that on the sidelines, come down, maintain possession, where there wouldn't be any controversy from the refs. I don't think you can beat that. And to be able to see him carry that out and be able to get there, and then have those other plays where he was getting involved with Landry Jones. There's a couple of Ben, that's awesome. I'd love to see him, because I know there was the move he put on where Mason Rudolph checked down to him and he got him in open space, and he put that absolutely just lethal cut on Farrington Hugan and just kind of cut up the field. Never saw that coming. We expect Rosie Nix to just bowl over people. To put the move on, he put Farrington on skates, so I see him do that. I would love to see Figner get some involvement with Nix and kind of have him be like a hybrid fullback that also has the potential to catch, because if you can have him catching out of the backfield, I don't know what opposing defenses are going to do to cover. There's going to be too many options for the Steelers to be able to make little folds in their offense to kind of get players out in space and make them make moves.
You know what? We're not done with that, getting out in space and making moves. You made a comment. You asked me, you sent me a message and asked, hey, does Jesse James look faster? Or there was just something about him that he was getting open, moving. He really stretched out to get this one deep ball from Ben Roethlisberger and hauled it in too. And it was just, he had a couple like that over the course of the day. And I'm just like shaking my head on that. Now, that's one tight end. The other tight end, one more guy, Xavier Grimble. I was mentioning the Ike Redman deal. If you don't know that inside joke, it's about the guy who at one time Isaac Redman was this training camp phenom and maybe not translated as well into regular season play. So people like to joke with the Steelers when you get a guy like Mike Hilton, who was kind of the training camp darling last year. I know Xavier Grimble had this title maybe 2 years ago. But he's walking around with his jersey pulled up, showing off like an 8-pack. He's ripped. He is just in incredible shape, and he looked very athletic. We were talking about the ball that was somewhat overthrown by Dobbs, but there was another pass. Was it from Ben, I think, where he got like wide open down the seam, and then also threw in like somebody just hit like the one control stick on the controller playing Madden, and he just spun. I forgot. I think it was Burhi that he just spun around, and he would have been gone. He would have took it to the house if this was in like real time. So your thoughts on those two guys, because all the tight ends impressed me today. I was at least the top three guys, the guys that look like they're going to make the final 53.
Yeah, with Jesse James, my biggest knock on him has always been his speed, because I think, I see him in the open field trying to run, and he looks like a baby giraffe trying to get out there because he's 6'7", it's a long frame, long body, trying to make moves. But today, when he caught this one pass from Ben in the gap in the zone defense, and he took off and he was sprinting in an all-out just hustle down the field to get yards after the catch. And I don't remember ever seeing him make those types of moves. And there were a couple other plays where I saw him catch the ball, and he showed some agility and some moves that I haven't seen from him in his time in Pittsburgh since they took him. And in my mind, if he has that speed, if he was able to work on some speed and conditioning and improve upon his weight during the off season, that would be fantastic. Because having a guy that with his frame and his size, and he is getting more sure as a receiver, as far as I'm concerned. He's not the Heath Miller. You throw it at me, I'm going to catch it for you. But he is getting more consistent with his radius and abilities to catch any footballs that are thrown at him. If he can add some speed to that, like I saw today, it would be incredible, because it'd be a huge little increase in his game that don't think a lot of people would expect from him. And I saw that speed today, and I thought I was imagining it maybe because I was at a different angle than I'm usually watching from a TV, but it was absolutely incredible watching him fly down the field there. But then when you have a guy like Xavier Grimble, who truly is athletic, he looked great today. I know that I took some slack today on Twitter because what else is new? Where
that's like your title. You're the guy who gets the flack on Twitter.
Yeah, I've accepted it at this point. But everyone's like, oh, he always looks like he's in great shape. Not what I saw him today.
No.
Today he looked like a complete different physical specimen. He almost didn't even look like a tight end. Honestly, he looked like a oversized slot receiver. The guy was quick. He was fast. He was making ridiculous catches. He wasn't perfect. There were a couple times I know in 7 shots where I watched him go deep, and he either got jammed and he couldn't get off the line. I remember there was one play where Bud was able to get on him. Dupree was able to get arm off the route, and he couldn't really get off of it. And which good for Bud Dupree. But he was making catches. He was showing off his athleticism. The play where Ben was able to hit him deep down the seam, that was all purely based on his ability to get off the line. There was a lapse in coverage as far as I'm concerned on the defensive side of the ball, but he found the niche. He got off the line. I forget which linebacker was covering him coming out of the slot. He was able to get off, wiggle in, and just take off down the thing, or down the seam. And when you have a guy like Ben Roethlisberger who can throw most of those deep balls, it's going to be match made in heaven. And like you said, Burhay was coming down to make a move on him. And I don't know if Burhay let up because, Burhay's known to go after the kill shot, being his name, the missile, which is why I love him. But, you see that opportunity. He put the spin move on him. And I think even if Burhay was coming in for the kill shot, Grimble just made a move on him that I don't think anyone was going to be able to stop. And if he can make those plays consistently, he could add some other wrinkles to the offense, because he has an athletic side to him that no other tight end on the Steelers roster currently has. Giving him the opportunities to kind of get out there and make plays, I think would be huge, not only for him, but again, just adding yet another weapon to a Steelers offense that's already full of them.
Oh, man. And you know what? I'm going to come back to Xavier one more time. The X-Man took off his pads, took off his shirt, walking around shirtless, looking like he was ready for a bodybuilding competition. I'm not even kidding. You could see his muscles pop from about 30 yards away. He looked like a Greek god. I mean, it's just he is in incredible shape. Fitz Toussaint's still in incredible shape too and looks pretty speedy out there. And I noticed that the Steelers also used Jalen Samuels. There weren't very many handoffs or carries or run plays. It seemed very pass-heavy or pass-focused for today. But I noticed that Samuels was able to grind out a couple yards just on that quick play too. And I'm thinking that's going to be a lot of, they're always stalling, in the red zone, those short yardage, short and goal to go type deal. And I think that's where you're going to see him. But not too much that I saw stood out from there. We'll come back to those guys in a second because you mentioned the inside linebackers, and Matakevich got a move put on him by Vance McDonald, and I don't know, he didn't look as impressive as I'm a truther for him too, but he didn't look as impressive today. He got beat bad twice. I forgot who the other play was. I know I tweeted it. I can't remember. It may have even been Antonio Brown, which hello, good luck. Everybody gets burned. I made mention of that. I was talking about that with a few people, and I was like, yeah, Morgan Burnett got burned by Antonio Brown last year, but who didn't? It's like Joe Hayden got burned. It's like all these guys are now like, well, if we can't beat them, let's join them. So they're all here now. But the inside linebackers was interesting because I saw that Vince Williams and Matakevich were changing sides in some aspects. So you had Vince Williams in Ryan Shazier's spot. And Matakevich seemed to be getting a lot of the first team reps, but Bostic was out there too. Somebody called him Sean Spence that was sitting by me, and I'm just rolling my eyes. No Sean Spence. He's faster than Sean Spence, please. Just a bad number. Why'd you pick 51? Oh, the rest of them were issued. That's right. You'd have to share it with Connor. It's like everybody gets Connor's number. Most popular jersey last year. So, hey, so the inside linebackers, there was something else that you may not have caught because it was over on the other field, but Keith Kelsey was getting a lot of the second team reps. And I had to keep going back and looking and seeing who 55 was because Keith Kelsey was not somebody that jumped off the page last year. He was somebody I had some high hopes for. And there was actually a play where he was covering Jesse James, and he nearly gets the pick, and they both actually go to the ground, and they were fighting for the ball for a good 30 to maybe 45 seconds before everybody came in there. I mean, these guys were it was like a loose ball drill. They were not letting go of it. So I don't know what your observations were with the inside linebackers. I don't know. I think the Steelers are still going to be doing a lot more hybrid type things and instituting a lot of safeties. You're not going to get a whole lot of that maybe in training camp, but Vince Williams, I mean, he didn't pop off the page. I almost had to see if he was actually suited up, and that might have been a good thing or a bad thing. I know he sealed off and closed off one of the runs during one of the drills, but Matakevich had two outings that were not so hot, so to speak, especially one with Vance McDonald. It was like Vance McDonald got almost kind of embarrassed maybe by the rookie Edmonds, and then came back and embarrassed Matakevich as part of it a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the linebackers this year. A lot of people criticize the whole lack of drafting them a linebacker once, the main guys had gone off in the first round. It didn't really faze me that much, truth be told. A little thing in the back of my head was telling me that they probably weren't going to take a linebacker. They missed out on one of the top guys this year, and I personally was okay with that. And that might be because I'm a Matakevich truther as well. Like you said, I wasn't overly impressed with him today. I don't think he had a bad practice, but he wasn't making impact plays, which I think they're going to need some level of in the middle. I did notice a lot from Keith Kelsey. He's a guy I was high on last year whenever they took him out of Louisville. He's very productive coming out of Louisville. Had some flaws, isn't the biggest guy, but the guy can make plays. He was consistently getting penetration on a lot of the run plays, and when he got through there, he was constantly forcing guys outside, which for a middle linebacker to do at his size, to get penetration and change the running lanes and cut them off and force the cornerbacks and outside linebackers and DNs to make a play, that's what you want. And that's when you see a lot of guys like Vince Williams have success. You see a lot of guys like Ryan Shazier have success doing that because they're athletic. They can get up the field and just stuff running lanes and force things outside. Seeing a lot of that from him, I saw a couple of times with Matthew Thomas making those type of plays. A guy that kind of stood up to me a little bit too doing that was LJ Fort. He's a guy that I think is going to fall under the radar just a bit because he's been here for a little while. No one's really impressed with him, but no one hates him either. So he's kind of just a guy that's there, but to see kind of some impact plays with him against the run, which for me, that's one thing that really stood out in general today during practice. I know you talk about the running backs. Now there's a lack of running plays at times today. At the end of the day, though, props to the defense in general, not even just the linebackers, but the front seven especially, and even some of the cornerback play against the run. There's a sense of urgency, it feels like, this year with the run defense and how they're trying to get in there. They're filling lanes. The D-line is doing their job, and not even just the starters either. Casey Sales is doing a good job. A little unknown guy. I think this is his second year in the league or third year in the league. He's bounced around. He was with the Rams at one point, I know. He was getting some penetration. LT Walton was getting penetration. Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt were doing what they always do, being just big brick houses, doing what they do best to seal off the edge. Seeing that opportunity to do that and having the linebackers come up the middle, like what Vince Williams was doing, like what Keith Kelsey was doing, that makes me a lot more comfortable moving forward. And, that's might bode not that well for the offense, but I know once the regular season starts, the offense is going to do their thing. Seeing the defense step up the way they have, having these linebackers make plays, that's exciting to me because I'm tired of seeing running backs run over, put on the Ezekiel Elliott type performance or a Leonard Fournette type performance. I want to see some physicality, and I think I'm seeing that a lot right now with the defense in general, but especially with the linebackers. Against the run, I thought they were much more impressive than they were against the pass today.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that too. By the way, with the LJ Fort thing, well, the people maybe he doesn't get the respect he deserves. Do you remember when the Steelers, the exact quote, I just had to look it up here, was, and this made a lot bigger headlines than it should have. Steelers re-signed Steven Johnson and terminated linebacker LJ Fort, and because they used the terminology terminated, everybody thought that LJ Fort had done something like unspeakable, and then he gets re-signed to the practice squad and he's back on the active roster in another week or two anyways. It's just one of these things where they shuffle players around between practice squad and active roster, but it was like the world was over for LJ Fort at that point. So it's funny you say, like Rodney Dangerfield, he gets no respect. Now, we had a couple other guys that stood out. And the next three names are probably all gentlemen that are going to be looking at maybe practice squad, special teams type play if they happen to make the active roster. I'm going to pick the low-hanging fruit before we get to the superstar of the day, and we have the two comparisons too with the wide receivers. But there's another guy trying to cut his teeth as a tight end. He is another mammoth, monster of a human being, Christian Scotland Williamson, who's kind of the exchange program guy from the UK, the rugby star, and more impressed with him maybe in the special teams drills. I was watching Danny Smith just go absolutely crazy. In fact, I got to see Danny Smith for a second. He had an Apple Watch on. This guy was pacing around the complex like for hours. He was on his phone, and some people were like, oh, maybe he doesn't want to sign autographs. No, I watched Danny Smith walk in an entire circle, which is probably at least a good maybe quarter or half mile around the campus, and end up on the other side still on his phone. So I asked him if he got his move goal, and he started laughing. He said, yeah, I've already got it in for the day. He's just going back and forth between the buildings. He is fiery over there, and he's working on with some guys like that. Stephen Ridley does something, and he's yelling, and he's really in his case. And then Christian Scotland Williamson, watching him go through a few of the drills, he seems to have like the angles and the things down that would be necessary to at least be a special teams guy. Now, as far as any of the tight end drills and that, I didn't get to catch him on any of those. I don't know. Did you, by any chance, see Scotland Williamson on any of the tight end drills?
I caught the very beginning of practice whenever they were doing doing a lot of the shoots and fitting the form and blocks. I know there's a play where Farrah McKelvert got talked up by Coach Tomlin. You heard him kind of talking about leverage and pad level because it was not that great. But the next play, Scotland Williamson came through, and he had some nice pop to it. I'll give him that. For a guy who a year ago had never played a down of football or snap of football or probably even had shoulder pads on at all, seeing him come along slowly but surely and pick up the sport as quickly as he is a testament to who he is as an athlete, and that's exciting to me. I don't think he makes the roster. I think at this point, to me at least, you're going to have McDonald, Grimble, and James making the top three, like we've seen the last 2 years now. I think it's that at that point. But I think a guy like Scotland Williamson is a guy that's going to come in there. If he can do decently in live action and at least make a couple catches, do some decent jobs on run blocking, I think he's a guy that potentially can sneak in and make a practice squad spot. I think there's enough to be tempted by him as a prospect to keep him around longer than just during training camp.
Yeah, and then we're talking about the very crowded wide receiver room, and we had one guy that looked like an absolute star today. We'll get to him in a second. The other guy, who I noted was probably smaller than what they listed his size at, but a local guy too, Pitt's Quadri Henderson, and he was working his way in on they had several guys on the punt returns on those drills. Cam Sutton was one. I'm trying to think who else was over there. I almost wanted to say like Tevin Jones or Marcus Tucker or somebody of that.
Justin Thomas.
It was Justin Thomas. It was Justin Thomas. They all wear like numbers in the teens, like 14, 16, 18 or something. So it like all runs together. And then of course several of the running backs, like Stephen Ridley and that. I believe one of the other Summers, or no, it was maybe it was Jalen Samuels that was working on some of it. But they had a couple of the running backs doing some of the work too on the opposite side of the field. But mainly it was those three guys. Looked like Cam Sutton was getting some of that in himself too. And I wasn't too impressed with Quadri, and we said that, wait until we see him play a game, because you said it before I said it. I'm mad that you said it before I said it, because I had the idea in my head that he's going to take one to the house in the preseason. The guy has the vision. But the star today, who was catching everything coming his way, who's a guy from my alma mater that, maybe not so many passes, but more a running football team from Youngstown State, is Damon Patterson, who didn't even get signed until after rookie camp. And it just seemed like he was getting open and catching almost everything that came his way. And just when you thought, okay, you know what, we're Ike Redman Award, like looking at this, he would do something else. I was very impressed with him, maybe almost more than anybody else, because I tried to come in and keep the bias goggles off, considering he came from my school. So what did you think about Patterson and Henderson today?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I think you have a couple of those receivers like Patterson, you have Henderson, you have Justin Thomas, Tevin Jones. You have that kind of group of undrafted guys that are all vying for maybe a practice squad spot. Maybe if they're lucky, they can knock off a guy like Eli Rogers on the 53-man roster. Seeing Henderson out there, like I continue to say, I wasn't that impressed with him as a receiver today, which didn't surprise me. I didn't expect to see him, balling out and having a great day necessarily as a receiver, because I think he has a long way to go. I think he's more of a gadget player than he is as a receiver. And I think that's why, if he is going to make the roster or make an impact, we're going to have to see him on special teams and live action, because that's where his money is. The Steelers brought him on because he could be a gadget player, and he also happens to play receiver. But I think they were intrigued by his return abilities, and I think that's why you're already seeing him towards the top of an imaginary depth chart that doesn't exist yet, because of the fact that he's so potent with the ball in his hands in open space, and you don't really get the opportunity to see that as a receiver. I think that's what makes it so complex when you're looking at the back end of the Steelers roster with the receivers, because do you want a guy that's going to be a pure receiver but might not ever see the field? Or do you want a guy like Henderson that could potentially bring you a lot of upside as a return man if he does decently in live action? But looking at Patterson, color me impressed, because today I think and even over the camp in general, he's been the darling so far, I think, with a lot of the unknown guys coming into camp and the undrafted free agents and guys that haven't been around very long or haven't had the opportunity to prove himself. I think he's quickly becoming a receiver that is going to be fighting not only for necessarily a practice squad spot, but he might be very easily fighting for one of the back end roster spots at this point, depending on how many receivers the Steelers choose to keep. He seemed to be catching most anything that was put in his way. He was making some competitive catches where, the DB was coming at him and high pointing the ball, and he came down with it anyway. Him and Rudolph had some great chemistry today. I know Nate commented to you earlier. Watching them out in the field, and it almost looked like it was a certain point in the practice where Rudolph was targeting Patterson, trying to get him the ball, because they were forming that bond, and they were seeming to be, having that consistency where he knows he's going to throw the ball to Patterson, he's going to come down with it. For me, it was unexpected because I didn't expect very much of Patterson, if I'm being honest, coming out of Youngstown State.
Not even me, and I watched him in college. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember I made a comment to you about a month or so ago. Maybe Patterson's going to be the guy that had a very kind of below average college career, and for some reason something just clicks in the NFL. It's early, it's training camp, it's against non-starters in the league. I'm not going to start praising his laurels at this point in time, but I've been extremely impressed, and I feel at this point, when you're looking at those back end guys, Patterson is a player that is very easily being recognized as a guy who's starting to separate himself as a guy that not only can be competing for a practice squad spot right now, but even maybe looking to get in the back end. And I think if he's going to do it, Henderson's money is going to be on special teams. But if Patterson can keep doing this and seeing these opportunities and continue to develop as a receiver, he's impressed me so far. Not even just today, but some other things I've seen from him earlier on in training camp. They obviously saw enough to bring him in for a tryout, and he stuck around, and now he's making all these impressions on people, and I like it. I'm going to be excited to see what he can continue to do as camp continues along here and start seeing him in some live action opportunities.
Yeah, and we actually, even though it is early and they're only 3 days through camp, we had that little inside tip as well. A source, an anonymous source we cannot name, that little bird spoke in our ear about Patterson as well, and saying, yeah, we're impressed with him as well. So someone within the organization, that is. So that's interesting. That's going to probably, as I say that and people latch onto that now, it's going to go through the roof. But if you make it out or you get an opportunity to see him, I'm going to be interested to see what kind of reps he gets when you actually get to the preseason games, especially the first two, where, not so many of the starters are probably going to have Rudolph out there a lot more often. It's going to be more real game situation, maybe some more vanilla type plays on either side of the ball, but that will be intriguing. Now, here's the final, almost like the bonus question of a very long training camp edition of our show for today. But this is the thing that maybe stuck with me the most when I actually gave it a little bit of thought. Did it even look like James Conner ended the season on injured reserve? He's lightning in a bottle right now. He looks incredible. And we're saying a lot of people look incredible. Xavier Grimble really, really stood out to me today. Demond Patterson stood out to me. But James Conner, head and shoulders above everyone, he was catching passes. He was hitting the hole. He was almost, he was making moves out in the open field too. He looked great.
We heard a lot of rumors about him and how seriously he was taking his recovery, how seriously he was taking this past offseason. And if you people at home don't follow him on Instagram or see what he's putting on in his Instagram page, he's putting workout videos on there. He looks like he's turning into James Harrison line with some of the workouts he's doing. He took this offseason to completely resculpt his body, completely change his persona as being just power back. Today, and even in camp in general, he's impressed substantially. I'm excited to see him get reps, while Bell continues his holdout. He's seizing every opportunity with Bell being out, and you can tell there is a big difference between year one and year two so far as a receiver, as a pass blocker, as a runner. I remember I was watching him in warm-ups, and he took off and was sprinting down the field, similar like to Jesse James, where I didn't expect it. Connor was fast. He was explosive. He was hitting the hole hard, north and south. If he continues to play like that, he's not Le'Veon Bell at this point in his career, so I'm not going to say that, but it will be interesting to see how he's able to potentially, spell Bell once the season starts, or if Bell has the same type of lethargic start to the season like he had last year, if they give Connor a little more reps since he's a little more pro-ready. But having another opportunity to build chemistry with Ben, to build chemistry with the offensive line and the other weapons around him, that's going to be completely imperative for him to continue to get some good looks and some good reps and potentially be the future of the running back spot for the Steelers. But if he continues to have this impressive of camp and completely look like that MCL injury was completely behind from last year, because a lot of guys, they come in, they have that injury and they just look sluggish. They look like they haven't been around football for a while. Like you said, you have no idea looking at him that he ever had a major knee injury and had surgery last year. I would have no idea. So it's awesome to see him doing what he's doing right now.
I'm just like, did he do anything besides rehab? Did he eat? Did he sleep? Like, my goodness. Like, I seriously had to think about that. I was like, didn't he have a knee injury? Didn't he? This is supposed to be almost like the Mr. Glass, like, type. Yeah, this guy we were hearing about this, injury prone and, knock on something. Yeah, definitely there. But, man, he looked absolutely fantastic out there. So, well, that's going to wrap it up for the training camp, week 1 of training camp in the books. And we got several more practices. Mike Tomlin is putting these guys out on the field as many times as he can early on. I think it's 11 out of 12 days that they practice, and then they're going to have a preseason game. In about a week and a half, we get an actual game and some football, so some more football in addition to what we got to see with some practice. So, Zach, thanks for taking time out of your day. I know we're all tired. We were in the sun all day and everything else, but I do appreciate it. Until next time, my name's Joe. His name's Zach. Be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.